Hello, everybody. It's Jen Norland, and I wanted to come on here and talk to you today about relationship dynamics, something that I've learned that in part of my life I have mastered are dynamics in relationships. And I think that there's so much opportunity for us to be able to really dig into internally what we've learned, what we have experienced, the beliefs we have taken on about our relationships and about who we are in our relationships. One of the things that I have lived in prior relationships in my life, and again, a pattern that has shown up over and over again in my life are these patterns of that I have of overgiving with the expectation that things are going to be a different way. And there's so much, it has been so much for me to unpack in this, like why I was choosing people who I felt I needed to overgive to, or who were very accepting of everything that I gave in my relationships. And these can be relationships with friends, relationships with family members, relationships with a significant other. And so again, these dynamics show up so that we can learn more if we choose about who we are in relationships, and then to be able to step into relationships in a way that that doesn't deplete us, that doesn't totally take us down the road of overgiving and burnout and resentment and all of those things. And I have been in relationships where I have experienced all of those. And something that in my own pattern of overgiving, of overgiving with an expectation of what I would get back from that person, I think I see now how much damage that has done in some of my relationships. And I understand where it came from growing up. That was kind of my role, in part in my family, was overgiving. It was also something that was modeled to me as I was growing up in the relationships with the adults that that were influential in my life. And this idea of overgiving and an expectation, and it doesn't have to be overgiving with an expectation. I think it can just be simply having certain expectations of relationships or of the people that we're in a relationship with, is something that can be very destructive. And being on the receiving end of that, which I have been on the receiving end of, somebody has a very high expectation of what you're going to do, or how you're going to do it, or, how you're going to solve a problem, or what you're going to do with your life. And a lot of times when you've got somebody in your life, when I had somebody in my life that had these kind of expectations of me, and I didn't do things the way they thought it should be done, or, in a manner that validated what they thought and what they believed of how I should do something, or how I should behave in our relationship or not behave. And if I tried to live up to that standard they had set, that expectation, didn't do it the way they wanted it done, and then that was often followed by a period of disappointment by that person in me, and trying to make up and overcome whatever I thought I was doing that was deficient in that relationship. And I see now how, like, this is the role that I chose to play in some of my relationships, and how much that impacted me and my self-esteem and my ability to be confident in my relationships. Well, guess what happened to those relationships? They weren't sustainable. And like I said, they did, for me, create resentment and a sense of never feeling like I could overcome the things that disappointed that person. I know I have also played that role in some of my relationships. I think it's gone both ways in some, and it's come from me in others, without necessarily receiving that back. And when I have done that, like, I see now, if I am in a relationship with somebody and I have an expectation of how they're supposed to do something and they don't do it that way, for me to be upset with them, to be disappointed in them, is like, it really ties you up in knots. Because if you're trying to do something and you're wanting to create something or do something different or change a pattern in your behavior, or create a different dynamic in your relationship, and you're doing it in a way that feels genuine, that feels authentic to you, and the other person disapproves or thinks it's the wrong way, or whatever that may be, then it creates that dynamic of disappointment and trying to prove, and like all of this crazy shit that is very damaging to a relationship. So one of the things that I have really tried to do is I'm not saying you can't have expectations in a relationship, but if I have an expectation that our communication is going to get better in a relationship that I'm in with somebody, it doesn't matter who, and we have a conversation about that, and we have an agreement that we're both that we're both going to work toward that goal, it's not my job to tell them how they should do that. It's my job to govern myself. And if there are things that come up in the way that maybe that person communicates with me, rather than just saying, you're not doing it the way that I think it should be done, or the way that we talked about, having a conversation about, how that impacted me. Because again, sometimes in relationships, like, what I've noticed is when we're working on things like that, like better communication and changing a dynamic, oftentimes something can get triggered, and it's usually something from the past, from a past relationship, from how we grew up, from our relationship with our parents or our teachers or someone else. And those triggers can spark and sometimes completely ignite and decimate any forward momentum. And the thing that I think is so important, I am responsible for my own triggers. That's number one. And B, when I can give the other person the freedom to be able to make those changes and navigate whatever it is from their side that they're trying to change without telling them how they're supposed to do it, to me, that is how you create a different dynamic in a relationship, where or in how you step into relationships and be able to change things so that you don't continue to repeat those patterns over and over. So I want to go back to the issue of our own triggers. I had posted something a while back about, because I'm asked this in my more often in my one-on-one coaching, is like, what about this? I mean, this person triggers me so much. And my response is that our triggers are here to teach us and to guide us and to lead us into the things that are unhealed within ourselves. And yes, you are responsible for your own triggers. It's okay to have a conversation with somebody who you might say to them, when you talk to me in this manner, or if you say this, it can bring up these feelings for me that I, in the past, have experienced, and that I am trying to shift away from how I react, and let it be more of a response. And it's okay to let that person know, but it's not their responsibility to not trigger you. That's walking on eggshells, right? And that's not that's not how you can build a solid foundation in a relationship with somebody. So yes, you are responsible for your triggers. And if the other person chooses to help you as you're walking through those, and understand that if they're speaking in a manner that activates that within you, like, it's important for them to know, but it shouldn't be something that they should have to completely change who they are and how they interact with you. Your trigger is your responsibility. My triggers are my responsibility. And that has been something, that's where the whole emotional intelligence comes in. Like, how do we manage those emotions when we're in the midst of conflict, especially if we haven't gained the skills over the course of our life to be able to do that. And that's where this inner work comes in. It's my responsibility. Something else that I have, and it's funny because I've told this story before, and I've been in rooms of people where I have talked about, I have a core belief that people are doing their best. That doesn't mean I think they're doing the best that they can or the best that's available to them. That means I think that they're doing the best that they can with the life that they've lived, the experience they've lived, whether or not they've done healing around some of those things that have, gotten in the way of their own personal growth and development. And I have literally sat in rooms where I have talked about this with people looking at me with their jaw on the floor, like, what do you mean people are doing their best? That's not true. And I think that there's maybe a miscommunication sometimes, or a misunderstanding of what I'm saying. I think that people in general walk around every day thinking that they're doing their best, and they're, they may have things that they do that they don't even consider the people around them, but they don't know, like, a lot of times people just react and respond. And, sometimes people are triggered. Sometimes people are in a situation, like, you think of somebody getting upset with somebody at the grocery store or whatever. Well, that person who's getting upset, maybe they're just an asshole. Okay, that's entirely possible. But also, maybe something is happening at home that they don't know how to deal with, and it's coming out in other ways. Or like the saying is, you never know, everyone is going through something, and you don't know what that is. And so again, that comes back to, when I have the belief that people are doing their best, what I've noticed for me is it's really opened up my ability to not add fuel to the fire, not from the standpoint of avoidance, but from the standpoint of, if I can see someone and not activate more of, whatever is happening with them, usually in a situation where there's not been, or there isn't great communication, that can kind of open up the gates for, grace, for people to realize and maybe better understand how they're impacting others. Because if I just run into the middle of a situation where somebody is triggered and I add fuel to the fire, there's no good that comes out of that. But if I can step in knowing, or with the assumption and with that fundamental belief that I have that these people are doing their best, then I can come from a place of being grounded. I can come from a place of being standing in my own authority. And there's a lot of power in that. There's a lot of power in being able to stand and know that no matter what's going on around me, with that belief that people are doing their best, and knowing that I am doing this work for me, that I am doing this work so that I can step in and be the the best and highest version of who I am, no matter what the situation, the circumstances, the people that are around. That's power. Like, that's real personal, empowered existence. And so I just wanted to share that belief with you. And it is one that I really had to, like, I really had to dig deep into, because when I first started down that path of, well, are people really doing their best? Well, I don't know. I mean, I even believe that for, I've talked some about my relationship with my ex-husband, and he has this belief that I am the person, like everybody, they believe we are whoever they've created in their mind, and that may be a true reflection of who I am, and it might not be. Well, in the case with my ex-husband, it certainly isn't, and I know that. However, I also know that he hasn't chosen a path of growth and, spiritual development, and the path that I have chosen. And so from his standpoint, I do think he's doing his best. Does he do things that hurt people? Yes, absolutely. Do I think he's doing the best that's possible for him? No, I don't. But he has to make a different decision if that is going to change. And maybe he will. I always have had hope that maybe that would change, but that's not up to me. So when I can see, okay, that person is doing their best, and I don't have to jump in the middle of it and try and change it or have different expectations of what they do and who they are. They get to be who they are. And in his case, maybe that's good for him. I mean, it's always good for people when they're in relationships where they can be who they are. And I think that we all want that. And this is one thing that has really helped me let people be who they are. That doesn't mean that I can't have conversations with people about their behavior and what they're choosing, but it does allow me to step in a manner of being grounded, believing that they're doing their best, and going from there, instead of starting at this point of activation, both them and me, and who knows where it goes from there, usually not any place good. It really helps me be able to step in from a place of being grounded. So I hope that makes sense. It finally makes sense to me. It took me a while to get there. And a lot of people think I'm totally full of shit until they actually understand what I'm saying. And so I hope you understand what I'm saying. If you have any questions, comments, I would love to hear them. I would love if you would follow, subscribe, and set your notifications up so that when I post something new on my YouTube channel, you get a notification. So hope you're doing well today, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.